Everybody, it's Cash, and today we're going to be talking about The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. This is book 2 in the Wheel of Time, and this is going to be a non-spoiler book review of it, where I will be sharing my non-spoiler thoughts on The Great Hunt. So, yep, let's just get right into it. Usually I do a spoiler discussion at the end of all of my book reviews. For the Wheel of Time, I decided to split them into 2 separate videos, so that is what I will do for this one as well. As always, we're going to start by talking a little bit about the plot, and I will start, of course, by saying this one was a lot better than the first book, and I liked the first book a lot, but this one pretty much kind of improved on everything just a little bit more, in my opinion. It is a little bit shorter than Eye of the World, not by much, but it is, a little bit shorter. And just overall, I thought it was just so much more enjoyable than Eye of the World. There was far more or less kind of Lord of the Rings Easter eggs. Not so much Easter eggs, but kind of just nods, if you will, where Jordan is clearly kind of referencing Tolkien there. And in The Great Hunt, kind of all of that goes away. He kind of definitely turns it into his own story here in his own direction. Well, it was always his own story, but you know what I mean. Things do feel a little bit quicker in this one. In the first book, there was definitely some portions of the story where, not that I was scratching my head like, why are we, still doing this, but definitely kind of meandered around a bit too much for my liking. This one, everything kind of has a bit more of a purpose, I thought. Kind of every chapter kind of fills a role in the overall story way better than Eye of the World. There never was a portion of the book that there was never a portion in the story where I was like, damn, I wish we could fly past this. Each different section of the book I did enjoy, at least in some way. There are some things I really didn't like as much, but I'll get into that a bit later or in the spoiler discussion. Overall, the complaints I have about The Great Hunt really aren't about the plot at all. It was, like I said, way better. Really improved upon. You can really tell Jordan was more confident in taking things in his own direction here, like I said already about 3 times. We get fantastic plot development just overall in this book, where kind of the ending of the first one had me at least shaking my head, kind of what really happened there. And I won't lie, I actually had to go online and kind of have someone or read a better description of, hey, here's kind of the ending of Eye of the World. Definitely no problems like that in The Great Hunt. I did find it very interesting, plot-wise, that we do kind of flip the Eye of the World on its head in The Great Hunt. And this isn't really a spoiler if you don't really have context here, but, in Eye of the World, the bad guys are pretty much chasing the good guys. But in this, that's kind of flipped on its head a little bit. I have really enjoyed the beginning of both The Great Hunt and Eye of the World. In Eye of the World, right at the beginning in Edmondsfield, I was hooked in right away with the small town vibes and the kind of little bit, not so much slice of life, but really just hanging out with the characters at home. It really pulled me in right away, oddly enough. And the beginning of this book, where a bunch of kind of new characters are introduced in the beginning setting of this story, and it's just really well done, and it immediately kind of lays the train tracks for this book, and it's a great time. With this story, we do get a few more different POVs, but it is still predominantly just Rand, and I'm still kind of waiting to see going forward how many different characters whose head we get to hop into. But so far, it has pretty much been about 85% Rand throughout the first 2 books. And not that that's a bad thing, but I mean, I won't lie. Especially in this book, some of my favorite chapters, some of my favorite moments in the story so far have actually been outside of being in Rand's head, funny enough. So yeah, definitely he is still the main character here for a bunch of obvious reasons. And with that, I'll kind of just move right on into characters, starting with our man Rand al'Thor. And he does get some key development in this book, real development compared to Eye of the World, and what I actually thought was really interesting on how Jordan did it is we actually see most of his development and growth through the other POVs, which is also why I like those chapters so much more. I think it's a Perrin chapter. This isn't really a spoiler. At one point, you're in Perrin's head, and he is kind of seeing and in his head describing the differences that he's noticing within Rand. So you can see, like, oh, wow, I can see the differences in Rand, and now that it's kind of pointed out, so we kind of notice it along with the characters, and it's really well done. But, like I said, I did have a few problems about the book, not really involving the plot, but I will say my main problem here about Rand is sometimes, there's a major plot point in the story and in these books, and if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about, where through this whole story, Rand is actively shaking his head saying, nope, can't be, no way, I don't have proof, there's no way, can't see it, not way, no how. And I'm like, come on, can we get past this, please? And sometimes it was really aggravating and annoying. But alternatively, I am happy that he is becoming more of a badass. Again, back to the beginning part of the book, you can still see the growth of him as a warrior. He's kind of getting trained up by Lan a little bit, and it's really well done. All of the boys are becoming less kind of just sheep herder villagers and kind of coming into their own and stepping up slightly, at least. Only 2 books in, but they're definitely a lot different compared to how they started. All right, I know what I just said, but I'm going to go back on it immediately by talking about Matt. And really, he still has no development, and still, I'm not seeing the hype here. Obviously, this is going to change, but after 2 books, he's actually, I think, the only Edmundsfield character we don't get a POV of yet. No POV Matt chapters just yet. I'm sure that'll come. But still not seeing the hype. But, again, I think everybody gets better development in this story than Matt. And, it's interesting because I know he's a lot of people's favorite, so it's very interesting to me to see why, and, that's why we read. Perrin is probably still my favorite character from the Edmundsfielders, at least out of the first 2 books. But he definitely takes a lot more of a back seat. He was definitely my favorite character in book 1, and in this one, I don't know because he kind of takes a little bit more of a back seat. We do get a few POV chapters, but he's kind of just not around as much compared to book 1. We do, however, get more glimpses of some of the abilities and skills that he is learning, and I still think it's some of the coolest things that Jordan has done so far. Would have liked a bit more, but what we did get from Perrin was very enjoyable, in my opinion. Just a strong, quiet character, and I guess I just like that trope. Egwene actually made me appreciate her character a hell of a lot more in this book. Again, I won't say what because this is a non-spoiler review, but something really major happens with Egwene in this book, and it makes me feel for her so much, and it is actually some of my favorite parts so far in the story. And overall made me like her character just a little bit more. She's still a big bonehead, but all of the Edmundsfielders kind of are in their own way, so kind of got to look past that just a little bit when judging the character, because they're all kind of, from the middle of nowhere boneheads. But Egwene, earned some brownie points. But speaking of more brownie points, Nynaeve, she is actually probably my favorite character in book 2. I've heard some people have problems with Nynaeve, with her character, but I mean, in my first read, I'm loving her character. She's surrounded by complete idiots half the time, and I won't lie, I mean, she's not the brightest, but sometimes it seems she has the most sense out of all of these people from Edmundsfield. My favorite chapter, one of my favorite chapters, maybe my second favorite chapter, is there's a testing chapter where Nynaeve goes through a series of trials, and it's just fantastic, just really well done. And the third act, she goes absolutely bonkers. Nynaeve, my favorite character from The Great Hunt. I'm moving over to Loyal, and he is still just as loyal as ever. And if you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about, because he is just standing with these guys no matter what happens. And there's just something super lovable about his character. He's just a top-tier character, in my opinion. We do learn a bit more about the Ogier overall in this book. I'll talk more about that in world building. But we do get some great insight into why kind of Loyal left home, why he does some of the things he does, and why he thinks the way he thinks. And again, through 2 books, he's just a really enjoyable character. Moraine and Lan, I guess my opinion is kind of the same on them after reading Great Hunt, because they talk about back seats. They're damn near just not in it at all. They're kind of they're in the beginning a good amount, kind of randomly in the middle. I think they have a chapter somewhere in there, and then all the way at the end. The beginning with Ran and Land was just really well done. The conversation they had gave me chills at one point, and it has me kind of nervous, because I'm pretty sure it's foreshadowing, not just about this book, but in the series, and it makes me nervous, is all I'll say right now. I am still really interested to see what Moraine has up her sleeve, because again, she spent this whole book clearly doing something, but we don't really know what. It seems like she was doing research or something. Again, sorry, I'm getting into spoilers a little bit. But Moraine and Lan, not really in book 2 a lot, so I guess my opinions on them haven't really changed. There are a few new soldiers introduced in this book. Huron is definitely the one that stands out the most. We also meet Inktar. We may have met him in Eye of the World, maybe. I can't remember, don't quote me on that. But Huron is definitely my favorite new soldier that we meet. The Shanarian, I think that is where they're from. We meet a few of them, but Huron pops off the page the most, in my opinion. And he has a really cool ability, actually. Really, back to get into the world building up next, but it's another thing that Jordan introduces here, where I'm like, okay, cool. He has a really cool, unique ability, and there's a certain dynamic between him and Rand that is really funny, in my opinion, and really enjoyable, and I hope to see more of their relationship in the future. All right, now to the world building and setting section, and this is where continuously, after 2 books, Robert Jordan, 2 for 2, this is, in my opinion, the best thing that he does here. We meet and spend time with probably, I would say, 2 or 3 different cultures, really 2 main new cultures and places and people that we spend time with, and they're entirely different than anything else that he's introduced to us so far, and it really makes this world come alive. Just like, in real life, that, every place has a different culture, and if you go to one place, it's going to be way different than if you go to the other side of the world. And that is definitely much the case in The Wheel of Time. And so we meet these 2 different cultures and spend time entirely different, and by the end of the book, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of both of them, and if we meet more people from these places in the future, I can kind of be like, okay, I know why they think the way they think because of the world building that Jordan has done so far. That doesn't include the Ogier. I do say we spend more time kind of understanding the Ogier a bit. I'll just say that the Ogier are not one of the 2 cultures I am talking about that we really spend time with. We do learn more about the Ogier, but I'll say probably not as in-depth as these 2 places specifically I'm talking about here in The Great Hunt. If you've read it, you know what I'm saying there. Again, other than the places, there are some really cool world-building concepts introduced. There is a new form of transportation that Jordan creates in The Great Hunt. It is debatably cooler than the Ways. We do see some new creatures. Grom, is that how you say it? Correct me if I'm wrong. They seem pretty terrifying, and can't wait to see more of those. And again, really, this is the thing that Jordan does his best. Not only does he really describe each setting, in the first book, it was probably he beat you on the head a little bit too much. He definitely still does that in The Great Hunt, but I don't know if he was just a better writer or it was just different. I don't know. It just felt different in The Great Hunt compared to The Eye of the World when he was giving you the description of how the places look, because they didn't just feel monotonous, like he just kept repeating the same things over and over. It definitely did feel a little bit different when we varied place to place. Pacing, I'll kind of just touch on quickly here in this one. I did already say it was a little bit of a shorter book than Eye of the World. Just like the first book, I really enjoyed the beginning vibes. Unlike the first book, it didn't have a middle portion that I didn't enjoy at all. Um, there still were slower moments, don't get me wrong, but overall, it felt faster. It just felt like a quicker story. I felt like, okay, things are happening. We're doing things. The plot is thickening. And even in the slow moments, I was excited to keep turning the pages and find out what's going on. Um, and the ending, if you saw my review of the first book, and kind of everyone that I've heard talk about this says the ending of Eye of the World is really unclear and kind of just happens out of nowhere. That is not a problem here in The Great Hunt. It's definitely not like modern fantasy or where you can see the rumblings of an ending at the 70%, 75% mark, and then it keeps building, building, building. Really doesn't start happening until I would say maybe even 85, 90% of the story. But it is so much more clearer of what is actually happening in this ending, and really well done. I don't really have to say answer, will I keep going? Obviously, the answer is yes. The question should be, when will I keep going? And I will be starting and finishing The Dragon Reborn before April is out, so that is the goal there. I will have book 3 of The Wheel of Time done before the end of April. But before we get to that, we got to finish out The Great Hunt, and I've gone back and forth with my score here a little bit. At first, I did land on a 4, but after a few days and sitting and thinking about it and talking about it, it doesn't feel right tying it and even putting it on the same scale that I had Eye of the World on. So I'm putting it in as a 4.5 out of 5 for The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. And yeah, that's going to be it for today. I will have the spoiler discussion for this up in just a few days. Still got to record that, and should be a good time. If you want to see that and my other videos, please hit the subscribe button. I do appreciate it. If you want to support this video, drop a like, and let me know your thoughts on The Wheel of Time through these first 2 books. No spoilers, please. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.